एंड वेलकम टू द G2's फिजियोलॉजी। और आज हम बात करेंगे वन ऑफ द जनरल टॉपिक इन द CNS फिजियोलॉजी एंड दैट इज अ रिसेप्टर पार्ट 1 एंड दिस इज ऑल अबाउट द disclaimer of these presentations. Before watching this video, please subscribe my YouTube channel, that is G2's Physiology. Also, you can visit my website esphys.weebly.com for the further updates. So here we go with the receptor part 1. So to complete this topic, we are going to address the competency number 10.2, describe and discuss the physiology of the receptor that is integrated with the human anatomy. And the most important concept that we are going to discuss is a classification of the receptor. And sometime in examination, this question can be asked. Now outline, first is the definition and second is the classifications. तो आज हम पार्ट 1 में दो चीज़ें करेंगे अबाउट द रिसेप्टर. वन इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ द रिसेप्टर एंड सेकंड इज द क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ द रिसेप्टर. So start with the definition. So receptor is a channel which sends the external and internal change in the environment, and this change is reached to the CNS, and that is called the sensation. So recognition of the stimulus, that is called the sensation, and further appreciation and interpretation of that sensation is called the perception. But for that, the first point is a receptor. So receptor is one of the important point or one of the important part in the sensory physiology, and this is the first point for the sensory physiology. In biochemistry or in molecular biology, the receptor is maybe present on the cell surface, that is or maybe in the nucleus. Now this receptor in the molecular biology, which stimulated by the particular molecules, और इसके हिसाब से सेल अपना काम करेगा. बट इन द सेंसरी फिजियोलॉजी द रिसेप्टर इज स्टिमुलेटेड बाय द पर्टिकुलर स्टिमुलस. इट मे बी मैकेनिकल, थर्मल और एनी टाइप ऑफ द स्टिमुलस, बट अल्टीमेटली दिस एनर्जी इज कन्वर्टेड इन द इलेक्ट्रिकल एनर्जी बिकॉज our nervous system is only transmit the energy in electrical form. So it is a biological transducer. So look at this definition. Receptor are the biological transducer which convert the stimulus energy into the electrical energy, and that is why it is called the biological transducer, because it convert the one kind of the energy into the another type. Now once the receptor is stimulated by the particular stimulus, the receptor potential will be generated. Now once the receptor potential is a local potential, once this receptor potential is reached to the threshold, it will generate the action potential in the adjacent nerve fiber, and that is the efferent. So through the efferent nerve fiber, this signal is enter into the spinal cord, and through the spinal cord it will reach to the particular area or particular part of the brain via ascending track, that we will discuss in the detail in the sensory physiology in ascending track. Now brain will recognize this stimulus, that is called the sensation, and further appreciation and interpretation of this sensation is called the perception. So receptor is one of the important part in the sensory physiology. So receptor are the site which detect the sensory stimuli, that environmental changes internal or external. Now one more important part in the receptor, that is it's a part of the sensory system. It is always have efferent, मतलब वहाँ से efferent start होगा, but yes, exception are always there. Now in the body there are few receptor which has both efferent and efferent. Example are the muscle spindle and outer hair cell in the organ of the corte for the hearing. So this is all about the definition of the receptor. Now one more important part in the receptor, that is most of the time is a microscopic structure. जो सेंसरी नर्व होता है उसका जो मॉडिफाइड नर्व एंडिंग होता है, the nerve ending which is modified in such a way that it is recognize the stimulus, and that is called the receptor. So this is all about the definition. So definition is very simple. It is a biological transducer which convert the one form of the energy into the another form, and this it will recognize by the brain and it is a sensation. Now coming to the classifications. Now classification of the receptor based on the several way. There are three way of the classification of the receptor. One is based on the functions, second is based on the locations, and third is based on the adequate stimulus or form of the energy, or we can say type of the stimulus. That we will discuss one by one. So based on the function, it may be exteroceptors. So receptor are sense the change on external environment that is present on the skin and mucous membrane or subcutaneous tissue. Interoceptors, internal environment, for example baroreceptor, chemoreceptors. Proprioceptor, these are the receptor which send the position of the body in the space. And second is a telereceptor. So what is the telereceptor? Stimulus is present far away from the body, for example auditory receptors. So these are the example of the receptor based on the functions: exteroreceptors, proprioceptors and telereceptors. Now based on the location where it is located, so maybe skin and subcutaneous tissue, is maybe deep, that is present on the muscle, bone and tendon, and maybe visceral, that is present on the viscera. Now the last and the most important way of the classification is based on the adequate stimulus or form of the energy, or we can say it is a type of the stimulus. So based on the type of the stimulus, the receptor is 5 types. Mechanoreceptor, so they will recognize the mechanical stimulus. Chemoreceptor, they will recognize the chemical stimulus. Photoreceptor, they will recognize the light as a stimulus. Nociceptors, now nociceptor means it will recognize the noxious stimulus. Now what is the noxious stimulus? So stimulus which cause the tissue damage. ऐसा stimulus के जो टिश्यू को डैमेज कर सकता है, तो this kind of the stimulus is called the noxious stimulus, and this kind of the noxious stimulus is recognized by the nociceptors, mainly pain receptors. And last is a thermoreceptor, so they can stimulated by the warm and cold. So based on the adequate stimulus, there are 5 types of the receptor: mechanoreceptor, chemoreceptor, photoreceptor, nociceptors and thermoreceptors. Now we'll discuss the one by one. Mechanoreceptors, so they detect and convert the mechanical energy into the electrical energy. Now mechanical stimulus means touch, pressure, vibration, pinching, crushing, bending, stretching. These all are the mechanical stimulus, and this change is recognized by the particular receptor, और उस ऐसे receptor को हम बोलेंगे mechanoreceptors. Example are the tactile receptor for the touch, hair cell of the organ of the corte in the cochlea for the hearing. जैसे sound आएगा hair cell bend होगा, and this bending is a mechanical stimulus. So these are the example of the mechanoreceptors. One more is the vestibular receptors, that is for the equilibrium. Baroreceptor, blood pressure में जो change होता है, that is it will produce the stretch in the blood vessel, and that is recognized by the baroreceptor, that is present on the carotid sinus and aortic sinus. So these are the example of the mechanoreceptor: tactile, hair cell, vestibular receptors and baroreceptors. There are many, but these are the few examples. The important mechanoreceptors. So we will in the next few slides we will discuss the 6 or 7 most important mechanoreceptor along with the properties. So these are the example of the mechanoreceptors. First is a Merkel disc. Look at this picture. These are the disc shape, and that's why it is called the Merkel disc. And these are the most superficial receptor. अभी जो हम 6 और 7 करेंगे mechanoreceptor के, these all are the present on the skin and subcutaneous tissue. The first one is a Merkel disc. Merkel cell plus Merkel disc, उसको बोलेंगे हम it will form the Merkel apparatus. It is also called the ego dome receptor because it form the dome shape in the epithelium. And these are the slowly adapting. They sense the touch and pressure and expanded ending. So these are the properties of the Merkel disc. Next जो आएगा expanded ending, it is a Ruffini endings. Again see, these are the expanded endings. And it is the smallest one. जो first वाला था, that is a most superficial. This is the smallest one. These are the slowly updating. Now based on the whether the receptor is a continuous discharge or not, so based on this there are two types of the receptors, slowly adapting and rapidly adapting. If we apply the stimulus and receptor is a discharge for a while and afterwards there is a no any further discharge from the receptor, तो उसको बोलेंगे हम rapidly adapting. Okay? और एक दूसरा receptor है, if we apply the stimulus and this receptor stimulation of the receptor is a continuously going on, so discharge is a continuous, so that is this type of the receptor is a slowly adapting. They sense the crude touch. These are the different modalities of the touch: fine touch, crude touch, expanded endings. Now coming to the third one, that is the Pacinian corpuscle. The name was given based on the discovery. It was discovered by the Filippo Pacini. And look at the structure of the Pacinian corpuscle. These are the lamella, and this is the first node of the Ranvier. So it is the largest mechanoreceptor, and it is the best studied receptor because it is the largest one. So it can easily studied. So it is the best studied receptor. तो receptor में जितनी भी study की गई है, that is mainly on the Pacinian corpuscle. When the receptor is stimulated, it will generate the action potential in the afferent fiber. कहाँ पे करेंगे? तो at the first node of the Ranvier. So first node of the Ranvier is a site at where the action potential is generated from the receptor potential. And these are the rapidly adapting. तो पहले जो हम दो देखे थे, they are the slowly adapting, and this one is a rapidly adapting. They sense the high frequency vibration and pressure. And these are encapsulated. One more encapsulated is a Meissner corpuscle. Look at this. This is the encapsulated. Relatively larger mechanoreceptor, rapidly adapting, sense the vibration sensation plus sensation of the contact, that is a touch, and these are the encapsulated. Fifth one is a Krause and bulb. Again, this is encapsulated, rapidly adapting, sense the touch and pressure. Sixth one is the Golgi-Mazzoni Corpuscle. This is the first identified in the tendon and muscles. Later on, it is also found in the skin. Rapidly adapting mechanoreceptors, they sense the touch and pressure, encapsulated. And last one is a last example of the important mechanoreceptor is a hair follicle endings. So these are the receptors which present adjust to the hair follicles, and there are three types: simple hair follicles, sinus hair follicles, and non-sinus hair follicle. Some are the rapidly adapting, some are the slowly adapting. So these are the example of the important mechanoreceptors: Meissner corpuscle, Krause and bulb, Pacinian corpuscles, Ruffini end organs, Golgi-Mazzoni corpuscle, and hair follicle endings. Now the second type of the receptor based on the adequate stimulus, that is the chemoreceptor. So they detect and convert the chemical energy into the electrical energy. So here the type of the stimulus is a chemical. Example are the respiratory chemoreceptor that you already studied in the respiratory physiology. Taste buds, that is for the taste receptor. Now one more important thing in the receptor is a neural tissue. It is surrounded by the non-neural tissue. So this combination of the neural tissue, the receptor plus non-neural tissue, it is called the sense organ. So for example, tongue is a sense organ and the taste buds are the receptor. Olfactory epithelium, So these all are the receptor are stimulated by the chemical stimulus. Now one more is a electromagnetic. It is also called the photoreceptor. So they detect and convert the electromagnetic or photic energy into the electrical energy. Example are the rods and cones for the vision present on the retina. They will respond to the light. Nociceptors, पहले मैंने बताया, it will stimulated by the noxious stimulus, so they detect and respond to the painful. Because the noxious stimulus is always painful because it tend to the damage the tissue. So ऐसा कोई भी stimulus कि जो टिश्यू को डैमेज कर सकता है और उसकी वजह से पेन प्रोड्यूस हो सकता है. So this kind of the stimulus is called the noxious stimulus, and this noxious stimulus is recognized by the receptor, and that is called the nociceptors. So this receptor can convert the physical, mechanical, photic or chemical energy into the action potential, and if these energies tend to damage the body cells, an example are the free nerve endings. Last is a thermoreceptors. So they detect and convert the thermal energy into the electrical energy. So here the stimulus is the temperature, and receptor example for the receptor for the thermoreceptors are warm and cold. So this is all about the today's session about the receptor physiology part 1, जिसमें हमने definition किया and about the classification. The most important question is the classification of the receptors. So definition is very simple: biological transducer, that is a keyword. Classification 3-way: function, location, and based on the adequate stimulus. Based on the functions: exteroceptors, interoceptors, proprioceptors, and telereceptors. Based on the location: superficial, deep, and visceral. And third type is based on the adequate stimulus. It may be mechanoreceptors. Example are the tactile, hair cells, baroreceptors. Important mechanoreceptors are the Merkel disc. They are slowly adapting. Ruffini endings. These both are the expanded endings. Next three are the encapsulated: Pacinian Corpuscle, Meissner Corpuscle, Krause bulb, Golgi-Mazzoni Corpuscle, hair follicle endings, chemoreceptors. So the sensation the chemical energy or chemical stimulus. Example are the respiratory chemoreceptor, taste receptor, and smell receptor. Electromagnetic, that is the rods and cones present on the retina. Nociceptor, that is the noxious stimulus, pain producing. Thermoreceptor, that is receptor for the warm and cold. So this is all about the today's session about the respiratory receptor part 1. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening.